Hello and welcome to an updated tier list for the most dangerous ghost types in Phasmophobia. It's been over 6 months since my last video, a lot has changed with Phasmophobia, a lot of the old roster have been updated and we now have 2 new ghost types, so time for an update. I am going to be basing these ratings on 2 different things. These are the things that I think are the most important when judging the threat of ghosts. These are what they have to help them initiate hunts. Can they start hunts early, for example? And secondly, what do they have to help them catch you during a hunt? They are the 2 factors which I feel are the most important when you're judging the threat, so that's what I'm going to base it on. I know a lot of people talk about the activity of different ghost types, but from my experience after playing so long, every ghost does have the capacity to be really shy or really active, irrelevant of ghost type, so I'm not going to take that into account when I'm talking about this. Just the 2 things that I talked about earlier, what they have to help them initiate hunts and what they have to help them during a hunt. I am going to be ranking them from S tier being the most dangerous, all the way down to D tier being the least dangerous. And of course, these are my own opinions, just based off the experiences that I've had over the months of playing. Let's get straight into it. I'm going to do this in journal order, so first of all is the Spirit. A very simple one to classify. The Spirit is a very generic ghost in general. It has no strengths, and it does have a very glaring weakness. Smudge sticks can double the duration that a hunt is prevented. Normally this is 90 seconds, it's 180 seconds for Spirit. 3 whole minutes you can stop it hunting, and you can bring up to 4 smudge sticks. The Spirit has nothing to help it start hunts earlier, and it has nothing to help it catch you during a hunt. So the Spirit is one of the weakest ghosts in the game in my opinion, so I'm going to put it down in D tier. Next up we have the Wraith. Reading the journal entry for Wraith, it does seem like a very menacing and interesting ghost. In reality, however, it's quite boring and generic again. So the strength of the Wraith, according to the journal, is that it almost never touches the ground, meaning it can't be tracked via footsteps. You can actually hear the Wraith stomping around you when you're in the room, so you can actually hear when they're close by. Also, I would argue that's actually a weakness and not a strength, because it does allow it to be identified a little bit easier when you're looking for footsteps if it disturbs a salt pile. If there's no footsteps ever, it's very likely it is a Wraith. But onto the hunt side of the Wraith in terms of its threat, it does actually have nothing to help it initiate a hunt. It can only hunt from 50. It does have nothing to help it catch you during a hunt as well. There were a lot of misconceptions about the Wraith in the past, even some that I believed myself, about the Wraith seeing through lockers, doors and closets. In fact, I do believe this was actually a bug earlier in the game, which is where this stemmed from. It's not a thing, not at least in the current version of the game anyway. Don't know if they will change the Wraith in the future, but as of me recording this, the Wraith is a very generic ghost. The weakness of the Wraith is that it does have a toxic reaction to salt as well. In reality, this does actually make it a little bit more active if it steps in salt, so yes, that will make it easier to get evidence and stuff like that. So nothing to help it initiate a hunt, nothing to help it during a hunt. The Wraith is very weak. Wraith is going down in D tier with the Spirit. Next we have the Phantom. I love the Phantom, really interesting ghost, and I think it's really underrated. I do think it's more of a menace than most people think initially. So the Phantom's strength is that looking at it will considerably drain your sanity. That includes both outside of a hunt and during a hunt. The Phantom has the potential to drain your sanity really fast if it's really active and you're getting a lot of manifestations, so already it has a very good way to initiate some early hunts. The Phantom's weakness is that taking a photo of it will temporarily make it disappear, so they are quite easy to identify in that regard. One other point worth mentioning about the Phantom is that they are not very visible during hunts. Normally the ghosts blink within half a second to a second, you know, when they phase in and out during hunts. Phantoms only appear between every 1 and 2 seconds, which is actually quite brutal and has more of an impact than you might think. Makes it very difficult to keep eyes on them during a hunt. Very difficult to know which direction they're coming from sometimes when you can barely see them, especially if your flashlight is flickering just at the wrong moment and you never actually get eyes on the Phantom. Can be very dangerous and very scary. I've been caught in some tricky spots by Phantoms many times because of the blinking. So they can drain your sanity quite quickly, in theory. They also are really dangerous during a hunt because you struggle to keep eyes on them, so I think the Phantom is a really big menace. Because they tick both of those boxes, I'm going to put the Phantom up in A tier. Now we have the Poltergeist. When you think of Poltergeist, you think of a lot of items being thrown and a lot of mischief. A very fun ghost in theory. So the strength of the Poltergeist is that it can throw multiple objects at once. Now this is very obvious when it happens. You can normally tell from the noise. It's a very distinct noise when it throws multiple things. It's like the noise of singular throws but amplified massively. One thing to note about the Poltergeist, when they throw items, for how many items are thrown, you lose 2% sanity. So if they throw 2 items, you will lose 4% sanity. So if they do use their multi-throw ability, you can lose a decent chunk of sanity in one go. I have to say though, the Poltergeist multi-throw seems to be very, very rare from my experience. Most missions, I will never see it. In fact, I will actually have to try and prompt it. You will actually have to hang around, throw a load of items on the floor, and even then you might not get it. I've hung around some missions just trying to observe it and never even seen it. So, it does seem like a very rare event. The Poltergeist actually has nothing to help it during a hunt as well. Once the hunt has started, it is a very generic ghost, no unique abilities. So, in theory, they can throw items to drain your sanity a little bit more than normal, but from my experience, this is very negligible, something you might not even notice, to be honest, depending on the room as well. If the Poltergeist is in a room with not many items, there's a very slim chance it's going to do anything, so it might be a very boring mission. So I really don't think the Poltergeist is much of a menace, but it can have a little slight edge in draining your sanity slightly, compared to some of the other weaker ghosts. So for this reason alone, I'm going to put the Poltergeist in C tier. On to the Banshee. Very interesting ghost. I know a lot of people fear it, maybe for a good reason. So the Banshee's strength is that it will only target one person at a time. I actually view this as a weakness personally. So say if you've got 4 people doing a mission and the target is inside the house, the Banshee will only go after them. The other 3 people will be completely safe for the whole hunt. So if you can work out who the target is, keep them well hidden, and the other 3 people can just wander around completely safe. So I do perceive that as a weakness for the Banshee. If the target does go outside, the Banshee will then behave like a normal ghost and will just target whoever it sees or hears first. The weakness of the Banshee is that the Banshee fears the crucifix and will be less aggressive when near one, according to the journal. In gameplay terms, this actually just means that the range of the crucifix is extended, so the protection range for other ghost types is 3 meters. For the Banshee, it's extended to 5 meters, so it's quite a difference. It can actually make a big difference in some of the larger rooms in particular. On some of the larger maps, you can really help protect yourself using crucifixes. Now let's talk about the Banshee's hidden power, because this is the really interesting stuff. So the Banshee with its target, it can lay in wait somewhere in the building. If the Banshee's target passes nearby, the Banshee can start a hunt there and then, regardless of sanity. Theoretically, this means it can hunt you as soon as you enter the building at pretty much 100% sanity. Very rare for that to happen, but something that has happened to myself. My earliest hunt for a Banshee was 6 seconds. When I entered Ridgeview, I made it from the front door to the top of the basement stairs, and boom, the hunt started. Totally unexpected, but it does let you know that it's a Banshee, so very easy to identify in that regard. I have to say, even though the Banshee's power is very, very scary on paper, it happens very, very rarely from my experience. So rarely that I really don't think the Banshee is much of a menace. Even if it uses its power on you, the Banshee would have spawned right next to you, so all you have to do is keep moving in the direction you were moving in. Just head to a nearby hiding spot. You can get a 5 or 6 second head start on the ghost while they're in the grace period at the start of the hunt. And when the hunt started, the Banshee will just behave very generically. It's not faster than other ghost types. It will only go for the target, which is a weakness in my opinion. So as long as you don't panic, the Banshee is actually quite easy to deal with, in my opinion. Especially because of how rare it actually uses its early hunting ability as well. So I'm very, very conflicted about where to put the Banshee. It does have the capacity to be a bit of a menace because it can hunt you early and spawn right on top of you. But it is very rare that this does happen, and it can only target one person at a time if there's multiple of you in the building. Very easy to work out who this is, and you know the rest of you are safe. Very difficult to place the Banshee, so after some thought, I'm going to put it in B tier. Just because it does have the potential to be scary, but most missions it will be a very generic ghost and you will be fine. Now let's talk about the Jinn, a very scary ghost in my opinion. So the journal states its strength is that it will travel at a faster speed if the victim is far away, And also, the weakness is that turning off the location's power source will prevent the Jinn from using its ability. So let's talk about this in gameplay terms. So when the power breaker is turned on the map, the Jinn will move at 2 times the normal ghost speed around the map the whole time. The only exception is when it comes within 4 meters of a player. In the past, this meant that it slowed down and you could outspeed it again. Now though, things are different. The ghosts speed up with line of sight, so if the Jinn is moving at 2 times speed around the map, and it comes close to you then slows down within the 4 meter range, it's not going to take long for it to speed back up because it has continual line of sight of you. Very difficult to break line of sight with the Jinn if it's within 4 meters of you, unless you've got smudge sticks perhaps. So yes, the Jinn is very scary when the breaker is on. You want to turn the breaker off at all times. I also have had, from my experience, a lot of Jinns turning the breaker back on, which does actually complement its power. I'm not actually 100% if they do this more than other ghost types, but from my experience, it kind of feels like that. Not sure for certain though. There is also one very scary thing about the Jinn that is not mentioned in the journal. The Jinn has the potential to drain your sanity very, very fast. If they use a hidden ability near you, you can instantly lose 25% sanity. So they do actually have a little sneaky hidden ability. You might notice a huge sanity drain and you're not sure why. If you do and it's a non-freezing ghost, sometimes you can immediately put it down to a Jinn and you might be correct. I have done it that way in the past. I have identified a Jinn just based off really low sanity for no reason whatsoever. Very scary when they do use that hidden ability, and I have actually had it happen on quite a frequent basis, I would say. Definitely much more common than the Banshee using its hidden power in my opinion. So the Jinn can drain your sanity mega fast using its hidden power, where you instantly lose 25%. It's very dangerous during a hunt. If the breaker's on, very fast, will only slow down near you and then it will speed up and catch up to you again. The Jinn can also turn on the breaker, from my experience, more than other ghost types, which complements its power massively. So I really do think the Jinn is a huge threat, the biggest threat in the game at the moment. So I'm going to put the Jinn up in S tier. You take the crown. Moving on to the Mare, the Ghost of Darkness. Actually a very simple ghost in reality, so if the building lights are off in the room the Mare's in, it has an increased chance to start a hunt. If the building lights are on in the room the Mare's in, it has a lower chance to hunt. In gameplay terms, if the building lights are off, the Mare can hunt from 60% sanity, whereas most of the ghost types are from 50. And if the building lights are on, the Mare can hunt from 40% sanity, so you can actually stop the Mare hunting until a really low threshold compared to other ghosts, which makes it quite weak in my opinion. Very easy to counter just by leaving the light on. The Mare also has nothing to help it during a hunt, behaves like a generic ghost, nothing to help it speed up or anything like that. But the only time the Mare could be tricky is if it keeps doing the breaker, or if it does the breaker at the wrong moment and you just can't get the breaker back on or the lights back on. It could hunt you a little bit earlier than you might expect, which might make it a little bit of a threat. But in reality, I think it's really easy to counter. So I do feel the Mare isn't much of a threat. I'm going to put it in C tier, just based off the fact that it can hunt you slightly early in some situations. Next, we have the Revenant. The name alone instills fear into many people. I can hear them crying out. The Revenant used to be the most dangerous ghost in the game in my opinion, but I do feel like it's been dethroned now. I do feel like the Revenant is actually kind of easy to deal with, in my opinion, but I know it still does pose quite a big threat to maybe a lot of the newer players in particular. So the Revenant is quite interesting. It moves very fast, 2 times faster than the normal ghost speed if it has line of sight of players during a hunt. However, it has a very big weakness. If it doesn't have line of sight of a player, it moves 1.5 times slower than the other ghost types. It crawls. If you see a Revenant during a hunt, for example, the willow glass doors that break line of sight, if you watch a Revenant when it's not chasing someone, it crawls so slow. So it only speeds up when it sees a player. If you're very careful with your positioning, after you have more experience in the game in particular, if you know where to be, if you've got a Revenant, if you know how to break line of sight easily, you can get rid of them really easily. You can easily evade them. So in my opinion, they're not the strongest anymore. I really do feel like the Jinn does take that crown. The Revenant also has nothing to help it hunt early, nothing to help initiate hunts above 50% sanity. But the Revenant is definitely a big threat to newer players in particular, but once you do get some experience under your belt, it is actually quite easy to break line of sight with the Revenant and make it crawl during hunts. But because it can pose such a huge threat, especially if you're in a bit of a big open room and it is difficult to break line of sight, I do still feel like the Revenant is quite dangerous, so I am going to put it up in A tier. I just no longer feel like it deserves to be in S tier. I do feel like the Jinn has overtaken it in that regard. Now we have the Shade. Oh, Shades. Bane of my life. Really boring ghost in my opinion. The journal does say that the strength of the Shade is that being shy makes it harder to find. From my experience, I've had a vast array of shades. I've had the really active shades, the really shy shades, both in a group and solo. Like I said at the start of the video, from my experience, ghost activity is not dependent upon ghost type. They seem to each have their own individual personality when the mission begins, like a dice roll, as you will. The weakness of the Shade, according to the journal, is that the ghost will not enter hunting mode if there's multiple people nearby. I have found that it will hunt, it will just take a long time to get around to doing it. Your sanity might just have to be a lot lower than normal. So the Shade is just really boring, in my opinion. It doesn't hunt above 50, it has nothing to help it during a hunt as well. You can easily abuse the Shade in a group if you all stick nearby. You can reduce the chance of it hunting for quite a long time. So the Shade really has nothing going for it and does have a big weakness if you're in a group. So the Shade is really weak. I'm going to put you down in D tier, right at the bottom. Next, we have the Demon. Sounds scary, right? Let's find out. So the journal says the strength of the Demon is that it will attack more often than any other ghost. Yep, that's right. It can hunt from 70% sanity as of the latest update. It did just get a buff. In the past, this used to be 65% sanity. So you can get some very, very early hunts with the Demon. And the scarier thing about the Demon, compared to other ghost types, is that there is nothing you can do to stop these early hunts. It will always hunt you from 70. And it can chain hunts not long afterwards. So you can get some early hunts. If you're struggling to find the ghost room on some of the bigger maps, like Asylum for example, you might struggle to even get to the room. You'll burn through your pills quickly. One thing to note about the Demon, it doesn't actually have anything to help it catch you during a hunt. Something that I would like changed to make it live up to its name personally. One of the suggestions that I preached quite a lot is maybe having the Demon carry on hunts after it kills someone, maybe extend the length of the hunt. Very fitting for a Demon, in my opinion. But I wasn't quite sure where to put the Demon exactly. I was thinking B or A, but because you can't stop the Demon hunting from 70, I'm going to put it up in A tier, because there are other ghost types that you can actually prevent hunting early, such as the Mare by leaving the lights on. But for the Demon, nothing you can do. So yes, Demon in A tier from me. Moving on to the Yurei, very interesting ghost in theory. In gameplay terms, I feel like it's a little bit lackluster in its current form. The strength of the Yurei is that it has been known to have a stronger effect on people's sanity, so potentially it can drain your sanity a little bit faster than other ghost types. It can't hunt you above 50, but if it can get you to 50 a bit sooner, that does mean some earlier hunts. From experience, I have never been able to work out the Yurei's power consistently. I've never had it consistent mission to mission between Yurei's. Some missions I've felt the difference. I felt, ooh, my sanity feels a little bit low, could you be a Yurei? Other missions it's been a Yurei, my sanity has felt completely normal. I've not been able to work out inside and outside of manifestations as well. I've struggled to pinpoint exactly what it does. It seems to have changed over the months, I have to say, from playing. So the Yurei is a bit of a mystery to me. Most missions, I really don't feel like it has much of an impact on my sanity. Only very rarely do I feel like, ooh, it is a little bit lower than normal. Are you a Yurei? If the Yurei does start a hunt though, it has nothing to help it catch you during a hunt, making it a bit on the weaker side again. So I do feel like the Yurei is kind of a bit boring in general, negligible effect on most missions, but the very odd mission I might notice it having some effect on my sanity. One other thing to mention about the Yurei, you can actually smudge them to confine them to the ghost room. Theoretically it should stop them wandering, making it easier to pinpoint where they're going to spawn during a hunt or to get evidence. That is their weakness. Because I do feel like it's on the weaker side in general and doesn't really have much to help it, I'm going to put you down in C tier, based on the fact that maybe some missions it could drain your sanity a little bit faster than other ghost types. Now we have the Oni. Honestly, not much to say about this one. The Oni is more active when people are nearby. makes it easier to find and identify essentially. You can also spot an Oni if it throws objects more forcefully than other ghost types, but the Oni has nothing to help it initiate hunts early. It can only hunt you from 50% sanity, and it has nothing to help it when the hunt's ongoing. No speed modifiers, no other hidden powers or anything. So the Oni's quite a generic ghost in my opinion. I've had my fair share of very active and very shy Onis as well, just like I have with the other ghost types. So the Oni really has nothing going for it. I feel like it's really weak. I'm going to put it down in D tier. Now we'll move on to the two new ghost types. We'll start with the Hantu. So the Hantu revolves around the temperature of the room. If the room is warm, the Hantu will move slow. If the room is cold, it will move fast. Very simple in essence. In gameplay terms, I feel like the Hantu is lackluster at the moment. Even in the coldest rooms, it will only just slightly outspeed the player, only a little bit faster than the other ghost types. In the warmest of the warmest rooms, it's very slow as well. I do believe the player outspeeds it to begin with. The Hantu will speed up with line of sight, just like all other ghost types except the Rev. That is worth mentioning as well. It's quite easy to control the Hantu though in its speed just by keeping the breaker on to keep as many rooms as warm as possible. The only time you might struggle to counter it is on the bigger maps if you don't notice the breaker's gone. But again, I do find it relatively simple to keep the breaker on. Never really an issue to get to it. The Hantu is also weak in the fact that it has nothing to help it initiate a hunt. It can only hunt you from 50% sanity, like a lot of the other ghost types. But because it does have a little edge compared to some of the weaker ghost types, it can be a little bit faster in colder rooms. I'm going to put the Hantu in C tier, but I do feel like it's quite a weak ghost overall. On to the final ghost, and the second of the new ghosts. It's the Yokai, my nemesis. So the Yokai is a very interesting ghost. It revolves around players talking nearby. So players talking nearby the Yokai will make it angry and increase its chance of attacking. In gameplay terms, this means that it can, and probably will, hunt you above 50% sanity if you're talking nearby it. I've found that this does happen very often as well. Its power is very common. Compared to like the Banshees who might rarely use their power, the Yokai quite often hunts above 50 if I'm talking nearby it from my experience. Also from my experience, the Yokai can hunt around 70% sanity. I've heard of reports of people getting hunted even higher, but myself personally, they've been happening around 70% sanity if I'm talking near it, which can really catch you off guard. Worth mentioning, it's the only non-freezing ghost that can hunt above 50% sanity as well, so it might make it a little bit easier to spot in that regard if you're confident there's no freezing temps and you're getting hunted early. The Yokai is actually weaker than other ghost types during a hunt, however, because it does have a reduced hearing range. That is its main weakness. Other ghost types can hear you from, I believe, 5 meters away. The Yokai, from experience, feels like it can hear you from around 1 to 2 meters, which is much lower. You can talk, you can cough, you can scream, whatever you need to do near the Yokai during a hunt, and where other ghosts might hear you, the Yokai will probably not unless it's right next to you. So yes, actually weaker during a hunt than a lot of the other ghost types. But the potential for early hunts, especially because you're always talking in Phasmophobia, you're always asking for signs, you're always trying the spirit box, or if you're in a group, you're probably always talking to your teammates. The Yokai can and probably will hunt you early, and it probably will catch you off guard. So it does have quite a big strength in regards to hunting early, but it also has some drawbacks during a hunt because it can't hear you as well. So I feel like it deserves a bit of a middle spot. I'm going to put the Yokai in B tier, just because of the potential for early hunts can really catch you off guard. So that's how I would rate each ghost in terms of their danger, with the main points being, can they start hunts early and what do they have to help them during a hunt? If you're watching this in the future, yes, things may definitely have changed because a lot changed between this tier list and my previous tier list. Phasmophobia is in early access and is constantly changing. So let's have a little recap. I put Jinn in S tier. I really believe that deserves the crown. Very menacing, has a lot to help it during a hunt, has a lot to complement its power, and can start some early hunts, drain your sanity quickly. The ones that have some pretty good strengths as well are Phantom, Rev and Demon. I've put them in A tier. B tier I've put in Banshee and Yokai. Still a menace, but not as big of a menace. C tier I've put Yurei, Mare, Poltergeist and Hantu. They have a little bit more than some of the other weaker ghost types, but they're still quite easy to counter in general. And finally, the really weak ghosts in my opinion that don't have any strengths going for them and are very easy to counter. I've put Spirit, Wraith, Shade and Oni down in D tier. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful if you're newer to the game or looking to get into it. And if you're more experienced, I hope you enjoyed the little recap as well. Do you agree with some of these decisions, or have you had some different experiences? Do let me know down in the comments. And of course, do remember, these are just my opinions and these are taken from my own experiences. Thank you for watching. As always, take care of yourself and I'll catch you soon.